Welcome back. So during the 16 days of activism against violence against women and children, one of the key issues is the conversations we have with our boys. As you know, it's men who attack women. There's so many conversations around why our men do that. Dr Ntombifikile Mtshali is the CEO of the organization Shout-It-Now. Doctor, good afternoon to you. You talk about a phrase, umuti ugochwa usamanzi. To bend the stick, you need to do it while it's wet. What do you mean by that?
Good afternoon, Stephen. Umutu gochwa usemanzi. It literally means that to bend the stick, you need to do it while it's wet. So when we have conversations around gender-based violence, so often we have a focus on the victims and survivors, which is correct, because post-violence they need the support and the care and the platforms and information for them to be able to navigate the incidences that they have faced. However, I think really the focus should really be around gender-based violence prevention. And how do we do that without, I think the older men, it's slightly difficult to have conversations with them. We will continue to have conversations with them. However, as a mother of two boys who was grappling with this issue of I'm a woman in South Africa. How do I make sure that when I raise my children and my boys, what are the conversations that I'm having with them around gender norms, around how they navigate their emotions in a safe and healthy way, in a healthy manner, around what a woman should do, what a woman shouldn't do, what they believe, also hearing their perspectives. And I really think that's where we need to be focusing our attention a lot more, because we know that women do not abuse themselves. They don't violate themselves. So we've got to be able to start with the root cause, those power dynamics and imbalances that lead to gender-based violence.
Dr. Mtshali, one of the sort of puzzles in this is that the majority of boys are growing up in woman-headed households. And yet they still, as men, commit violence against women. Is there something about the male example that they see? They see violence, they see it being perpetrated by men in their communities, and they see violence as a way to respond to problems.
Yeah. This is something that I grappled with back in 2018, and I've been mulling over it in terms of what is it that we do differently. As I mentioned that I'm a mother to two boys, that was precisely my question. How do we, as single mothers, as mothers or women that are raising boys, what are some of the conversations we need to be having and we know that it's part of having to negate what happens and what is pervasive in society as societal norms and what is accepted. And I really think that one household at a time, we need to start having those conversations. One school at a time, one church service at a time, we need to start having these conversations around this. Because what I also looked at is the fact that some men are not real role models for the behaviors that we want to have our boys emulate. So we've got to be able to start doing things slightly differently. And that's the part that I feel quite strongly about, because I was saying that I feel disempowered. We have these campaigns with government. We're saying government needs to do more. But as an ordinary citizen, I felt disempowered about what my role could be. And this is basically me saying that I think the call to action is we need to have more of these conversations with the younger boys and younger men as well.
I mean, I think for generations, boys have been told, you mustn't hit your sister. They still do, unfortunately, in some cases, and from a young age. And I mean, it's about that. Of course, what you do the 17th time that day he's hit his sister is you want to give him a smack. Now, I'm a father. I have a son and a daughter. And I've certainly felt that. And that's where it starts to get tricky as well, because just at that moment, when you're about to, when they're young, and then you realize, actually, this hand that I'm holding up now is part of the problem, This is how it all perpetuates. It's quite hard to catch yourself in that moment.
I think, Stephen, we need to be a little easy on ourselves. I think we're conscious now. I mean, I'm definitely a conscious mother around, I used to give my sons a whipping, to be honest. And I also realized, because probably haven't given one of my sons a whipping in like 2-3 years, but he still remembers it. And that's a trauma, right? And I don't think that's something we should be running away from. We need to be holding ourselves. And I think it's creating that platform of us having to navigate all our emotions in a safe and also in a healthy way. So by the time you want to smack your child, it is the 17th time, but you've been trying to say, this is what you need to do, and really being able to step back, and recount, recollect yourself, figure out what is leading to this frustration, because now you're feeling frustrated because you've been saying the same thing. And really, we need to emulate those behaviors as well. I mean, it's easier to just beat up a child, right? It's easier than having to reinforce the conversation, but that's the time it requires, consciously, deliberately, every single time, unfortunately for us. Or maybe fortunately.
Well, I mean, Dr. Mtshali, it's a conversation that goes in so many directions. I've sometimes wondered, and I mean, again, I'm no expert. I grew up in the 80s and 90s, and as a teenage boy, you did not cry. If you were caught crying, it was literally game over at the boys' school that I was at. And I wonder if that's part of the issue, that, girls can cry, I put all of this in inverted commas, and boys cannot. And that emotion, that inability to, I'm feeling so sad and frustrated, and I'm not allowed to cry. I'm not allowed to. So I'm going to lash out instead. I don't know, is there something in that?
There's definitely something in that, Stephen. I think that is one of the biggest contributors, because we tell boys they're not allowed to have emotions, such emotions, whereas boy children are also just humans, and they are entitled to full human emotions, and we just need to teach them how to navigate those emotions in a safe way. Violence, and I think this is pent-up anger or pent-up emotion that they're not able to express as easily. We also, you do know that there is obviously issues around you perceived as, you're not heterosexual, you're gay, etc., etc. if you express emotion. I have been very deliberate about this over the last couple of years. And sometimes when I get frustrated with my son when he cries, and so when I get frustrated, I'm like, stop crying, please. And he's like, but mom, you said it's okay for me to cry. And I have to remember that. That's what I've taught him. And I really think we need to be able to allow boys to express their emotions fully, as they are human as well. And all emotions are valid.
There's a sort of vocabulary around expressing emotions. I've noticed that girls are much better at expressing themselves. I'm feeling like this because, and actual words will come out that I can understand, whereas boys find that much more difficult. Ronald Lamola, who's the Minister of Justice, once asked me, actually, on the screen that you're on now, he said to me, Stephen, do you tell your son that you love him? And he explained how important that was, and I do, and I have always done. But I think generationally that did not happen before. I know very few men my age whose fathers, I think I don't know any, whose fathers told them that. So what I'm saying is that there's an example that men do an X, Y, and Z, but they don't express their love to their sons. Maybe if they express their love to their sons, men are not just violent. They don't just raise a hand. They also display love.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And those are the conversations, and those are the conversations that we should be having, correct? Where we do have fathers in homes. However, we know that some fathers are not present. This is also when we have to call on the communities, the uncles, the brothers, who are able to help the children have the right language, to express their emotions fully and completely without, it starts with creating safe spaces, because you can't say, don't express your emotion and then you close up the space for people to be able, or children to be able to then tell you about how they're feeling. So you've got to be able to do both. And that's where the conversation is. And I'm really proud of you that you are consciously and deliberate about some of these conversations, because that's where it starts. I think also where I think a call to action from my side is where we see men who are raising the bar, who are doing the conscious work and the active work of parenting, and also, calling each other out. We really need men to we need the voice of men, because men do listen to men or other men much more than they do to us as women. And really, that's why I'm saying that the focus on the victim is so incorrect, because there's really not much we can do there. But we need to create these platforms where men can also safely navigate this. We know how many times do people tell us something and we think, that sounds like it's a bit abusive, but we don't say anything because we think it's their business, and what happens behind closed doors must stay behind closed doors. But we really need the male voices to be able to speak out on that and also be better role models for our young children.
Dr. Ntombifikile Mtshali, thank you. CEO at Shout-It-Now. Really do appreciate that.